Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, we are joined by sophomore from the Minnesota State women's hockey team, Alexis Paddington. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Alexis, and how's everything going?
Everything's great. Just got back from Christmas break, so started practicing again. But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And obviously, your team is about to start the second half of the season at the time of this recording. So, how would you evaluate your team's performance as of now, especially since you guys ended off on a good note, sweeping LIU before the Christmas break?
Yeah, I think we've had a great start to the season. It's definitely been a tough start, playing some tough teams early, but I think that we bounced back and we've been growing a lot as a team, and obviously finishing on a high note with the positive sweep. So, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, what are some of your goals and expectations for the second half of the season? Because you still have to play some of those tough
Mhm.
opponents again in the second half. So, do you think your approach is going to be a little bit different, or you're still trying to go in with the same mindset of just trying to play your best to win those games?
Yeah, I think the next couple of weeks are definitely big games for us. I think our approach is the same as it's been all year. Try and win these next couple of weeks because they're super important for playoffs. Um, but we definitely can start this weekend with Lindenwood.
Yeah, and how exciting is it to have a non-conference series to start off the second half? I guess like how do you approach those non-conference series? Because in the grand
hmm
scheme of things, they don't really matter too much, but obviously if you lose them, they could affect your pairwise ranking.
hmm Yeah, they're definitely. We look at them the same as we look at any game. Going into it, obviously we want to win. It's a great time to practice too. Power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5 hockey, and I think that it's kind of nice to start out on the road and get back in the swing of things going into this year.
Now, individually for yourself, it seems like you've
Mhm.
improved a lot from your freshman year, both offensively and defensively. I'm curious in your mind, what's been the biggest improvement you've made to your game, and how have you gone about improving that part of your game during the off season?
Yeah, definitely off season was trying to improve my all around game, but I definitely think that my speed and pace has definitely improved this year. It's super big in college. It's such a fast game. Playing with teams like the Gophers and Ohio State, where it's just such a fast hockey game. So that's definitely one thing I've been focusing on a lot. Even still throughout the year, you can always improve on that. So.
Yeah, and what are some of the drills you work on in the off season to make those improvements? And I'm curious for yourself because I know a lot of people who are from Canada had to deal with a lot of COVID challenges
Mhm.
because things were getting shut down. So was it nice last off season to not really have to deal with a lot of those challenges? And do you think that benefited yourself when preparing for the season?
hmm I definitely benefited from not having everything closed because coming in as a freshman, COVID was kind of still like locked down everywhere in Canada, so it was a little tough to get to the rink. But I spent this most of summer here actually training. We do team training in the summer for a couple weeks, so that was really nice. I definitely my main drill I do is actually off the ice, and I do the agility ladder a lot. I do it before games too, and I get made fun of, but it's something I think that helps. So,
What's that drill? I've never heard of it before.
so it's like a ladder, and then it's kind of like a footwork thing. I did it with soccer a lot when I used to play soccer. So it's just a lot of like quick feet type drills. And it's something that helped me improve my overall speed, I think. So,
I feel like I know what that is. It's like the thing that you
yeah,
put on the ground and you're like, I think I
yeah,
if I saw it, I would know it, I feel like.
yeah. It's definitely you'd know what I mean if you saw it, but you can
Hmm.
tape marks on the ground too. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And talk about playing in the WCHA. Obviously, it's such a deep conference, and it's arguably the most
Mhm.
talented conference because you have some of the best players on every single team. What's it like playing in that conference and just the competition you face every night, and how it's made you a better player?
Yeah, I knew definitely coming into college that I wanted to play in the WCHA just because of how competitive it is. So playing in it, it's exactly that. It's a very competitive division, super physical, and it's so much more fun to play in games like that where it is a neck to neck type game. And I definitely was really happy with my choice in staying in Minnesota too.
So I want to transition now and talk about the beginning of your hockey career and kind of work all the way up to where you are today in college.
Mhm.
So doing research on yourself, it says that you're from Ontario. So talk about growing up there and how'd you start playing hockey?
Yeah, so I started skating when I was 3 years old. My dad threw skates on me, and he has an outdoor rink in our backyard every year. So that's kind of how I got into hockey. Then I started playing hockey when I was 4, and I was playing hockey and dance for a while. And I had to pick eventually, and I ended up choosing hockey. But it's definitely been a very hockey-filled childhood. Both my younger brothers, Elliot and Ben, play hockey too. So my family spent a lot of time at the rink growing up, but wouldn't want it any other way.
What made you choose hockey over dance? Was it just something, is it because your family all played it, so it's sort of like you wanted to stick with what your family and brothers did?
Yeah, I think I just liked the physicality of it. I'd leave the rink in like a tutu and like my pink dance outfit, and I think my dad, I look up to him a lot, and he played it, and he really liked hockey. So I was like, you know what, my dad does it. It can't be that bad. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And who was your favorite player growing up? Was it someone on the Maple Leafs, I assume, or was it a women's player on the national team?
it actually was Sidney Crosby growing up. I'm not really sure why, because I think the Penguins used to be my favorite team when I was little. Um, but I also did look up to on the Canadian women's national team, Marie-Philippe Poulin, who's still playing today and is still unbelievable. But definitely her.
Do you think the golden goal helped with that, like having him be your favorite player? Because as an American, I love Patrick Kane, and part of it's
Yeah.
because he's American, and I feel like I gravitate towards American players, especially in the NHL, like Jason Robertson. I think he's had such a great year. I'm assuming it's
Mhm.
probably the same for Canadians, like they gravitate towards like Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby just because they're from the same
Mhm.
country. So you sort of have that little connection.
Yeah, true. Well, and my current favorite player right now is Mitch Marner, and he's also Canadian. So
So now talk a little bit about before you played in college hockey. It said that you played for the Thunder Bay Queens. Curious how you got the opportunity to go to that organization and what was your experience like there?
yeah, so before going to the Queens, I played boys for a couple years. And then I kind of knew I wanted to go play college, and obviously playing boys double A hockey wasn't really going to get me that exposure. So I made the decision to try out for the Queens organization, and it was a very good decision, and I have no regrets about it. I built so many relationships and connections, and um, I definitely think that that helped me get the exposure I needed to come and play college too. Just because we travel to places like Minneapolis, Winnipeg, just not in Thunder Bay. It's kind of an isolated city. There's not too much around us. So
And what was the transition like from boys to girls hockey? Is it that much of a transition at all, or is it relatively the same, at least since some girls I know transition before hitting's in place, but I know some play a year or two
mhm,
with hitting. So that could obviously have an impact on how the transition was like for you.
I did transition before hitting. So I was my the biggest thing I noticed was like the off the ice relationships. It was a lot more fun once I went to girls because I had that friendships with everyone. Um, but I definitely think that when I was playing boys, it was kind of like it was competitive still. Like it was the same. I didn't notice too much of a change in hockey. I was still young when I switched over. I played for Queens for 7 years, and I switched over when I was 13, I believe. So I was pretty young still, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And obviously, the only thing I know about Thunder Bay is I think Steven Stamkos is from there. So I've actually heard of Thunder Bay before.
He's actually not from Thunder Bay.
Oh, really?
But Eric Stahl, the Stahl brothers, they're from Thunder Bay. I don't know if you know them. They played in the NHL.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
All right. Well, I got that one wrong. That's definitely a embarrassing moment for me on the podcast, but I'll take it. Sort of transitioning back to your Thunder Bay experience, though.
yeah.
You talking about how like you got exposure in different areas with that
Mhm.
team. I'm curious, like hockey wise, how it helped prepare you though for college hockey.
Yeah, definitely the people around me. I think that my coaches, my teammates, my coaches kind of also had known that it was something I really wanted, and I think that made them super hard on me, and I loved that because that made me a better player and a better person. So I think that that helped me kind of get to where I am, like pushing me into, oh, do the extra work, oh, do this, and a lot of it's intrinsic too, but it always helps when you have those people around you.
And now, something I heard is that you've faced a lot of adversity getting recruited and getting to the point where you are today. Talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them, because I thought that was interesting. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on was a ton of people reached out to me saying that you went through a lot just to get to where you are today in college hockey.
Yeah, I suffered a couple knee injuries in my 12th grade and 11th grade year. So I ended up having knee surgery kind of around the time COVID had actually started too. So I dislocated my knee about 4 times, and then ended up getting surgery on my MPFL, which nobody's ever heard of, but I got surgery on that. So then it was really tough coming into college because I hadn't played a game in over 2 years. Um, so the summer I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like my first time skating because I hadn't skated with my knee and with COVID. So it was pretty nerve-wracking when I first got here. But I had great teammates around me who kind of helped me through it too. And playing my first game in 2 years was super fun because that's what you play hockey for, is play the games, right? So
Yeah, and what was the recovery process like for you getting back to the level of being a college athlete? Because obviously with COVID and all that stuff, it seemed like it was much more of a challenge to sort of recover that
mhm.
knee injury because of all the shutdowns that were going on, not just like in hockey, but just with like just having doctor's appointments and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, even to just get like workouts in and like rehabbing that type of thing. Um, at that point, when I had my surgery, the doctor's office were pretty open. I went to physio a couple times a week. Obviously, had to wear masks and that type of thing still, and only a couple people in the building at once. So I had to make sure I was on top of like booking everything and making sure that I was on top of my rehab. Um, and then with skating, it was super hard at that point to kind of get back on the ice. So I went on my rink a lot, which I was thankful we had our outdoor rink still because that was kind of my main way of rehabbing on the ice, just because all the rinks were still pretty restricted and closed, and I couldn't really skate with groups yet at that point. So
Now, getting back to your Thunder Bay experience, what's the best memory you have with that organization?
I have a lot of good memories. We won the Can-Am Cup my first year of midget, and that was really cool. And then I would just say like traveling, and getting to hang out with everyone and do like funny things. Like we pranked our coaches by TPing their van and just like little things like that, that are memories that I'll have with those people forever. So I think it's just a lot off the ice for me, definitely.
Did the coaches make you bag skate after TPing their van?
No, he didn't, but he did get our door with a bucket of ice and water, so he got us back.
That's good. That's good. I think that's fair.
Yep.
Now, doing research on yourself, I like to find like different teammates that you had in juniors that played Division I college hockey. And one teammate that I found that was pretty interesting was Kendra Fortin, who's currently with Bemidji State. So what was it like being your teammate, and what's it like now going up against her in WCHA games? Because that's kind of interesting to have someone that is your teammate one year and then
Mhm.
be a rival the next year.
Yeah, it was definitely super cool. We actually grew up playing against each other from the time we were 3 or 4. She played boys too for about the same time I did, and then we ended up being captains together for a couple of years later in Queens. But it was super cool, playing with her, and then obviously transitioning to college. And that just made it for me. I know, and probably for her, it's way more competitive playing each other's teams because obviously we played together for how many years, and now we're playing against each other. So it's definitely fun, knowing someone too on a different team just because I don't know too many people being from Canada. But
Now, talk about your recruitment process to Minnesota State. What made you want to go there versus other schools you might have looked at? And how did your knee injury affect the decision of your recruitment process, if that was the case at all?
mhm. So I committed before the rules were kind of changed. I committed going into my 10th grade year. So pretty early, I made the choice to come here. And I kind of known from the start I did want to stay in Minnesota. So that kind of narrowed my options to where I wanted to talk to. And being so close to Duluth, that was one of my top two schools just because they're so close to home. And I grew up watching them play. But after touring Mankato, I came to a camp here. I kind of just got like a homey feel for it, and I don't really know how to explain it, but it just like felt right. Um, and I loved the coaches and I really liked the environment and the rink. And that kind of made me decide to come here. And at this point, I was going to play tennis as well. So I committed to play hockey and tennis, but with my knee injuries, I kind of wanted to focus on just hockey just because um, I think it was too much for rehabbing to be able to do both. But yeah, that's kind of why I chose here.
That's cool. I didn't know that you play tennis. How does tennis
hmm
help your hockey ability, if at all?
I think it makes a big difference actually, just like agility wise, because it's
Hmm.
such an agile game. And I definitely still play it and I love playing it, but ultimately hockey was my number one. So
Yeah. Yeah, tennis is one of the few sports that I've actually never played in my entire life,
really,
and I don't get it whenever I watch it, so that's partly it, but I feel like it seems somewhat fun. I just need to get some
yeah.
lessons and sort of start to get into it.
Yeah, I used to be a tennis instructor, so maybe I'll give you some lessons one day.
Well, if you're ever around in the East Coast, feel free to hit me up and we can you can teach me some things in tennis because I don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
But what's the coaching staff like at Mankato? Obviously, you have Coach Harrington, who I think is one of the most underrated coaches in women's college
Mhm.
hockey. He's done a good job with that program. What's it like playing under a guy like him?
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, it's also cool knowing his history as well coming into here, but I really like him as a coach and he really cares about his players and he's a great guy. And it definitely is again, as I said, super cool like being the Miracle on Ice team. And one of the first things when I like saw who the head coach of the team was like, "Oh, like him?"
Hmm.
um but yeah, it's been a fun year so far and last year was super fun. Um yeah.
Does he ever talk about the Miracle on Ice thing, or is he humble about it?
Um, I feel like other people bring it up to him more than he brings it up himself. But yeah, he went to I know he gets acknowledged for it a lot at like big events and stuff, which is cool. But
I would love to because one of my favorite movies is Miracle. I think
yeah,
it's the best movie ever made in my opinion. Just so many great
yeah,
scenes. I can quote it all day if I had the chance. And
yeah,
I just want to know like if certain scenes like actually happen. Like did the bag skate scene actually happen when Herb Brooks was like again? Did the
yeah,
scene where the guy like sort of hurt his leg and then Herb Brooks got pissed at him and he went up and that there's just like certain things I want to know. The test scene with Jim Craig. I just like
yeah.
to know if like those actually happen or if those are just made up for the movie.
I think they all happened. I definitely know the bag scene happened because I think the first thing I asked him might have been that because I wanted to know too because I
Yeah.
obviously watched that movie a lot. I think it's a great movie, but
No, that backskate scene, it definitely brings back some bad memories. But I remember I had a
yeah,
coach one time who was very old school. He's like, I wish I could backskate you guys like they did back in the 80s because now they won't let me do that anymore. So I can't imagine what it was like back then.
yeah. No, I definitely joked around, not really joking, saying that I hope we never get begged like they did. And I wasn't kidding, but
Yeah. I just the best part of that whole scene was when he's like the name on the front of the jersey is a hell of a lot more one than the name on
yeah,
the back. Get that through your heads again. And then he
yeah,
like skates and like all about to throw up. It's like, oh my gosh.
yeah,
And every hockey player I think can relate to that in some level.
yeah. I definitely agree. That was a good scene. And the whole movie of Herb Brooks too. All of his quotes. My dad always requotes them too. So
Oh yeah, Herb. He's honestly probably the best coach of all time, and it's actually
mhm.
very sad that he passed away before that movie was even released. Because I would love to
Yeah,
hear like his perspective on some of that stuff. Because I think those scenes are popular, but you never got to really see Herb Brooks' thoughts on those scenes because not
yeah,
many people knew about them before the movie was released.
yeah.
Now, what was like some of the big adjustments you had to make to college hockey? Was it the speed of the game, physicality, or just the decision making?
I definitely think speed for sure was the biggest thing. It's so much faster than any other teams in high school and it's also just competitive. Like everybody wants to win. Like the mindset I think is a lot different. And it's a lot more competitive. You have no time. So you have to make your decisions really quick, as you said, decision making. Um, but it's also about being a bit more poised with the puck because you may think you have lots of people on you, but you actually do have the time. So that's another thing too.
Now, how have you balanced both academics and hockey? Because that's obviously something that is an adjustment for a lot of players, and especially for yourself, because you had to do, like, I'm assuming you had to do some high school online, and it must be
Mhm.
sort of weird to transition back to in-person learning.
Yeah, it was definitely a very big adjustment just coming into college in general. But I think the biggest thing is time management. We skate and work out the same time every day, and that kind of helps with managing like homework and classes. It's like, okay, I have hockey from 9 to 12, and then class 2 to 3, and then homework 5 to 7 or whatever it is. And knowing that we play games only on weekends normally, so that kind of helps like the consistency. But yeah.
Now, obviously, in your freshman year, your team lost to Minnesota in the WCHA playoffs. I'm curious. The reason why I want to ask you about that is because just talk about what you learned from that series and how it's helped you today as a sophomore.
Yeah, that was definitely a very tough loss for us, just being a third game overtime loss. And I think for everybody who was on the team last year coming to this year, we all just kind of know what it takes to get there and to win. And we know what it feels like to win. So I think coming into this year, like having that experience is gonna help us a lot towards the end of this year. Um, but yeah, it was definitely we definitely want revenge coming back into this year as well on them. But
And what's crazy about that is I think you guys, so Duluth obviously made it to the national championship game. And besides the national championship game, I honestly thought your team gave them the toughest battle throughout their entire playoff run.
Mhm. Yeah, we had a good 3 games against them. It was and we had a crazy goalie situation last year too with how many injuries with our goalies, and I don't know if you knew this, we had a tennis player come play goalie for us last year at one point too.
Yeah,
So,
someone did tell me that. That's pretty crazy. But apparently she did a
yeah,
good job though, from what I
she
was
did
told.
really well, yeah. We were with Ohio in a pretty close game, I think it was 5 or 6-3 for the first game, and I think she hadn't played a game since high school, so it was pretty cool, like, seeing another player from a different team just come into our team, and we opened the door, we're like, "Okay, here we go, you're in the game."
Yeah, especially against a team like Ohio State, that's the best
Yeah,
team in the country. That's like probably the worst type of team you want to go into as a goalie that's never played in
yeah,
college before.
yeah.
But luckily, you guys managed to do that well. And is it hard? Because I played goalie one game back when I was in Pee Wee, so I feel like I did win that game. Don't want to pat myself too much on the back, but
Yep.
is it hard to go in as a goalie in college hockey? And I know that sounds like a dumb question, but or is it sort of like you're in the moment and it's hard to really think about just the pressure that's with that? Like, could you play goalie, I guess, if you had to?
Well, I volunteered if we didn't find a goalie last year, actually. I was the one who was like, "Okay, well, I guess I can go in net, but, like, you don't want me to, but I can." So I
Yeah.
definitely think it's very hard to step into a game like that. Like, the shots are harder, the plays are faster, you gotta move quicker, you gotta have quicker reflexes, so I think it was definitely she did amazing for doing that and stepping in, but it's definitely a tough adjustment for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to know what that's like. That's kind of crazy. But
Yeah,
now she could say she's played a college hockey
yeah.
game at the Division One level, which not many people get to say, which is
No,
pretty cool.
exactly. Yeah.
And obviously, talk about your goalie, Calla Frank, because I feel like she's one of the best goalies in the
Mhm.
WCHA, and I don't think she gets enough credit that she actually gets like nationally.
Yeah, no, she isn't playing this year because she redshirted, but, she's definitely a reason that we were in a lot of games, and she has made some big saves for us when we needed her to. So, it's tough missing her this year, but we're hoping to see her next year
That's
back
good.
in.
That's good. That's good. Now, you guys did pull off a lot of upsets though last year.
Mhm.
I feel like I should mention that. You guys, one of the big ones was obviously beating Minnesota in overtime. I think that was the first time
Mhm.
your program beat them in like a few years. So
Yeah.
talk about what was like pulling off some of those big upsets and what it meant to your team, and especially the one in overtime against the Gophers on the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely, I think, our biggest win last year, just because it was in their home rink, and overtime wins are always fun too. And I think kind of going into the game and going into the third, especially, we're like, we can win. Like, let's go. Like, we can beat these guys. Like, and I think that's like the biggest thing too with us is we know we can do it. We just need to go do it, kind of thing. And it was super cool beating them, and obviously they're a top 5 team in the country, so made it more special.
Now, what's your favorite road arena to play in? Is it Ritter? I heard the visiting locker room is terrible, but maybe you like that. So who knows?
Yeah, it's a tough locker room, but I think my favorite, I haven't played in Wisconsin, but I hear Wisconsin's also a really fun rink. But I personally like UMD, and that's just because I grew up watching hockey in that rink. Um, and because, well, we lost there last year, but I want to go win there this year kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I really like Amsoil, but I do like Ritter too, because it's like you're kind of like in a bowl and everyone's, surrounding you. So it's overwhelming seeing all the people. You're like, oh, this is kind of fun though.
e- exactly. And obviously with Amsoil, it's hosting the Frozen Four this year.
Yeah.
And I think your team can make it. I know a lot of people
Hmm.
aren't thinking that way, but I'm just going to give your team some confidence and hopefully I just want to know that if you guys have some success this year that I was always believing in you guys. So I just want to put
Yeah,
that out there.
I appreciate that.
But I also want to ask, why did you choose to wear the number 14? I'm always curious about why players pick their numbers. What led you to make wear that number? Was it just given to you, or is there a story behind it?
There's not too much of a story. I was number 16 for a couple years, and then there's one year where I just couldn't get that number, and I was like, well, 14's closer, like close enough to it, and I picked it. And then I kind of just liked it and the way it looked, and I was like, this might be my number. I spent every year after I committed making sure that there's no 14, so when I came in, I could get my number, and it worked out. But
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's definitely got to be. Is it nerve-wracking checking the roster every year before you're committed to see if your number isn't taken?
yeah, I was like, okay, 12, 15, okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's good.
But
That's good. I like the number 14 because it's sort of unique because I don't can't think
mhm,
of any like big time hockey players that have won that number, so it's kind of your own
yeah,
thing if that makes sense.
yep, no, I agree. You're kind of your own
Well,
person.
exactly, exactly. Well, we're now in the segment I like to call the non-hockey segment, where I ask you some non-hockey questions just to get to know you a little bit more off the ice. Now, if you need time to
Mhm.
think about any of these questions, feel free to let me know. I'll answer some from my perspective. But first one is, what music do you like to listen to?
I'm definitely a big country girl. I love Zach Bryan, so I'm more on the country side. I'll listen to some Drake once in a while, but that's more of a pre-game type music for me. So,
Yeah, I'm into kind of everything. Like I can listen to hip hop,
mhm,
old rock, and then obviously country, like all at once. And I wouldn't find that weird, but I know some people might.
yeah,
For country though, I'm more into Morgan Wallen. He's probably my favorite
yeah,
artist, and
I do like Morgan Wallen.
I do love his new EP, whatever it's called, with those three
Hmm.
new songs, especially Tennessee Fan, because I'm
Yeah,
a big sports guy, so I like when artists incorporate sports into their music just because it's something that I feel like I can relate to and enjoy better.
yeah, no, I definitely Morgan Wallen's probably in my top three too. He's so good, like every song.
Yeah, him or Thomas Rhett for me are my probably
Yeah,
go-to country artist.
yeah, I like Thomas Rhett too.
Now, what is your most embarrassing moment? I guess for myself, it was just in the interview, not knowing where Steven Stamkos is from. So you got to see that. But for yourself, what's the most embarrassing moment that you've had, whether it's hockey or off the ice?
Um, well, my teammates could probably back me up on this. I don't really have like one embarrassing moment. I kind of just will have like very random like falls. Like nobody on the ice is around me and I just somehow fall. Um, that probably is the worst, but like in warm up last year, I just toe picked and just flew like randomly. But that might be it.
As long as you're not doing it during the announcement lineups, that's all
I
that counts
know.
because that would be really embarrassing because everyone's watching that.
Yeah, well, the very first time I was starting this year, like my teammate turns to me, she goes, "You better not fall because you would be the person to fall." And I'm like, "Oh my God, don't tell me that." But
Luckily, you didn't fall because I definitely would have saw that if that
yeah,
happened.
I think that would have blew up.
Now let's talk about some of your teammates. First one is, who is the funniest teammate you have at Minnesota State?
Oh, we have a pretty funny team. There are a few people that make me laugh almost every day. But I would say the funniest is probably Charlotte Akravic. She just everything out of her mouth is funny. I don't know why and I don't know how, but it is.
Now, which teammate is the worst at responding to their text messages from yourself?
Um, Either Anna Wilgren or Kennedy Bobbitt. They both just don't check their phones ever. Like you have to call them about 8 times to answer. But
Now, who has the best style on Minnesota State women's hockey besides yourself? And I've been told that Jaden Seifert has the best style in all of women's college hockey, but I haven't seen, we do this thing for College Hockey Talk called Outfits of the Weekend, and Minnesota
mhm,
State hasn't posted anything from your team. So this is sort of like a call out to them for that to happen. But are
yeah,
those assessments accurate about Jaden Seifert, or is there someone else on the team that has the best style in your opinion?
I definitely would say Jaden has very good style. Another person who does is Claire Budarak. She
Hmm.
always has new outfits every day, so that's kind of fun. I'm definitely not in the top 10 for that. I don't have very good style compared to some other people, but
What do you wear before a game? Like, because I feel like a lot of the thing that's coming around, at least for the women's players, the hats. I feel like that's
mhm.
like kind of a big thing. Do you try to be creative or do you just wear the same thing?
I have the same couple outfits. I did buy a new hat that was like a fuzzy bucket hat, so I might throw that in there this weekend, but
Hmm.
shake it up a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I feel like you're selling yourself self a little bit short. Bet you have much better style than you think you do. So I'll compliment you on that. I think you have better
Oh,
style than you think.
thank you.
No problem, no problem. Now, what is the most interesting thing you've read or seen this week?
I've been keeping up with the World Juniors a lot. So definitely Connor Bedard, with his, I think he has 14 points in like 2 games or something like that. Or in the tournament, not sure, but that's pretty unbelievable. So that might be the coolest thing I've read this week.
It is
Um,
against Germany and Austria. I don't want to like
it is,
discount them
it
a
is,
little bit, but like I
it
feel
is.
like people in Canada are sort of overrating that a little bit.
Yeah, and it is against not teams like the US or Finland, but still kind of crazy to do that as
Oh
well.
yeah. No, I agree. I think he's definitely a generational player. He's
Yeah,
definitely going first overall. It's kind of crazy that
yeah,
Canada has this draft seems pretty loaded because I know Adam
yeah.
Fantilli seems like another good player. So I'm interested to
Hmm.
see like who's gonna actually get him with the first overall pick. I'm hoping it's a team that can at least know how to build around him. That's all my hope is, but he's definitely a special player to watch.
Yeah, no, there it's going to be an interesting draft this year because I think there's a lot of good players coming in.
For sure, for sure. And obviously, I hope it's a Canada US World Junior Final because this, as an American, and you're definitely going to disagree with
Yep.
this, but it's nothing
Nope.
better than watching Team USA win in Canada. It's the best. So I have to put that
Yeah.
out there.
It's the same for Canadians in the US too, though. But it's definitely my favorite rivalry, and I don't hope for you guys, but I hope that it's a Canada US game at some point.
I agree. I agree. Do you guys have, is there any chirping that goes on with your teammates about that? Because I know you have
Um,
some Canadian and American teammates.
yeah, we keep it quiet mostly to try and avoid any wars in the dressing room, but yeah, we're severely outnumbered too. There's about 3 Canadians to 17 Americans, so we got to pick our battles.
Listen, if they win the World Juniors, though, I feel like you have a lot of ammo to go
Yeah,
against those 17 players. So, and you have
yeah,
Connor Bedard
definitely.
and Adam Fantilli and Murray
Yeah,
Phillip Poulin. So that's pretty good
yeah,
if you ask me.
yeah. That's a pretty good lineup.
Now, last non-hockey question is, if you could have lunch with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
This one I was thinking about. I don't know. I actually don't know who I would do for this, but if I had to pick like off the top of my head, it would probably be Mitch Marner, just because favorite hockey player. It'd be kind of cool to meet him.
Yeah.
Um, my brother once pranked me that he got a signed stick from him, and I believed him. But yeah, he would definitely be a super cool person to meet.
Yeah, for me, probably like Wayne Gretzky, just because like I would love
Yeah,
to hear like how he dominated the NHL back in the day. I guess
yeah,
current players, I really like Jason Robertson a lot from Dallas.
hmm,
He's like been one of the most underrated players in the NHL this year, and he's honestly could win the MVP this year. Just no one's talking about it.
hmm,
But I saw a story with him of like how he grew up in California and moved to Michigan, and it was pretty cool. And he has a brother that plays for the Leafs actually, so I think he would be a good person
yeah,
that I'd love to talk to.
yeah. That would be cool.
Now, getting back to some hockey questions now. First one is, what advice would you give younger people listening to this podcast on what it takes to make it to the Division One level where you are today, especially since you face a lot of challenges getting to this point?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is just kind of doing the things that people don't want to do. Obviously, when you're young and in high school, like you want to hang out with your friends and you want to kind of do the social aspect. But if you take even like 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to try and do one thing to make you better, it's going to go a long way and add up eventually.
Yeah, a lot of it seems like you have to like sort of miss out on some big events in order to get to where you are today, and it's those sacrifices that I think people don't notice and realize what it takes to sort of get to the highest level in hockey.
Yeah.
Now, what should be done to help grow women's hockey, in your opinion?
I definitely think exposure. You know, having the US Canada rivalry series just being on TV, like little things like that, like lots of people want to watch them or will watch them, but they're just not always broadcast or even college hockey. I think college hockey is super competitive and could be exposed it like get more exposure around the US and Canada too.
Yeah, they were saying something with the U18s that like in 2020 it was recorded on like a doorbell cam and like no one watched it, but then last year they finally put it on TV and it got like the most viewers ever. And someone
Yeah.
said like this is what happens when you actually like put it on TV, like people can actually watch it. And I enjoyed it. That Canada US team, like there's
Hmm.
gonna be some really good young
Yeah.
players that are gonna be in college hockey in the next few years. So I
Hmm.
really enjoyed that. I think that's something that could be marketed and exposed as well, just those players that aren't even in college yet.
And even just like not even watching the game more exposure, but just talking about players too. Because I think a lot of the conversations that happen are about like the guy hockey players and that type of thing, and maybe throw like some of the girls into the mix too in those, and that will just be like, oh, I've heard of her, I want to watch her play, kind of thing too.
Yeah, because obviously I n never had the chance to see any of those players play prior to
Hmm.
that tournament, but like one player that stood out to me was Brooke Disher. She was the
Hmm.
captain of the team, and like I've never heard of her, and now that was like a defenseman that I wanted to watch in college hockey because of that tournament. So stuff like that definitely goes a long way. So just from my perspective, yeah, I feel like that's something that I hope continues to grow. And I know the tournament's happening now or in a few days in Sweden, so I'm interested to see like where that's going to get broadcasted, and I hope it's on ESPN somewhere, at least here in the US. And I don't know where it'll
Yeah.
be in Canada, but
Yeah, hopefully it's on something so we can all watch it, but
exactly, exactly. Well, do you have any shout outs you want to give to your teammates, family members, friends, or do you want to say anything? The floor is all yours.
I'll give a little shout out to my family, my mom and my dad, Dave and Carolyn, and then my brother Ben, my other brother Elliot, who he's had a great season so far, and he's a Sioux draft pick, so hopefully we'll see him go there in the next couple years. But and all my teammates, and they're my favorite people. So
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Alexis. I really appreciate your time. It means so much to myself. I'm wishing you and your teammates nothing but the best for the rest of the season, and I hope you guys can accomplish big things this year. And it'll make me happy to see you do that. And just kudos to you for what you've gone through just to get to where you are today. I think it's awesome to hear those type of stories, and you're definitely a player that people would want to root for just for what you've gone through with your knee injury and the COVID stuff. And you're just a nice person as well. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it and sharing your story with me and others.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Now, one question I want to ask you before I end this meeting is just